morning, good afternoon, good evening, namaste, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all of you to the World Teen Parliament's 48th Parliamentary Session. Today is December 14th, and we are starting this session at 2 p.m. IST India time. During this session, we have two amazing guests from two different countries who will be sharing their ideas, opinions, what all new and amazing things are they doing in their constituencies. And as is tradition at the Teen Parliament, we'll try to take as many questions from teenagers as possible. Before we start the session, for everyone who's there on this call and who might have joined in from different links that would have been provided through the chapter school network of the Teen Parliament, if you're there on this call, if you want to have an interaction with the guest for today, you can submit your questions in the chat or the question link that you have with you. Make sure that you submit your questions there. A very warm welcome to both our guests for today. This particular session is going to be the last parliamentary session of the 4th World Teen Parliament. So all the 4th WTP MPs, I hope you enjoyed the journey for the last 12 months. From next month, January, the 5th World Teen Parliament will come in place, and the teens who get elected will get positioned as MPs at the Teen Parliament for the next one whole year. Till now, the registrations are open, so if you wish, you can go on blubworld.com and register for the WTP elections. If you are among the top 100 teens who get the maximum votes, you'll get elected as a member of parliament. So now it's time to start the session. A very warm welcome to our guests for today, Honourable Mr. Carl Bates, the Member of Parliament from New Zealand, and Honourable Victor Musowa, the first Deputy Speaker of Malawi. A very warm welcome to both the guests. Thank you so much for taking out the time and being here with us. For starting this session, let's bring some more context. The World Teen Parliament was established in the year 2022 with a simple idea of creating a forum where a teenager could interact and question a policymaker. Now, why did we want to do that? For a very simple reason. Some of the most amazing experts on understanding people are members of parliament. They know how public emotion works. They know how people think, how masses think. And as a teenager who's now getting into a world driven by AI, decision making being done by computers, we need people who understand people. And who better to learn it from rather than members of parliament themselves? They are the ones who represent the voice of the people. So this is a forum that gives teens an insight, or rather a way of understanding and learning from the most amazing people pleasers, or people who understand people, the ability to understand, influence, and see how the world works. So thank you so much to both our guests today. Till date, this very forum has been addressed by sitting MPs and ministers from more than 50 nations. Every month, this parliamentary session brings in policymakers from different parts of the world who share their time, their experience, their stories with teens from more than 40 countries who fight the elections at the World Teen Parliament. So today as well, let me invite the first speaker for today for their opening address of the 48th Parliamentary Session. A very warm welcome to Honourable Mr. Carl Bates, the Member of Parliament from New Zealand. Sir, over to you for the opening address of the 48th Parliamentary Session.
Thanks so much, Daksh, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to the 48th World Youth Parliament. This is an exciting group and a great opportunity for all of you to develop your skills as potential parliamentarians. 25 years ago, I served as a youth member of parliament here in New Zealand. We have an opportunity every 3 years where we run a youth parliament where electorate members like myself and list members, we have two types of members of parliament in New Zealand: electorate members of parliament who are elected by a constituency, and list members who are elected based on the party votes that the different parties receive here in New Zealand. And I was elected as an electorate member of parliament in New Zealand, but back as a youth MP, I represented a list member of parliament, and it was a great opportunity to understand how parliament works, the opportunity to influence how you go about making laws, how the system works. Gave a taster for something that obviously I went off and had an opportunity to become a real member of parliament, if you like, 23 years later. So I joined the New Zealand Parliament in October 2023. Going into next year, we will be having our elections here in New Zealand again. And I'll have to be bringing out some of those skills that you're learning through this process, such as influence, such as engagement. In New Zealand, we do a lot of things in the process of becoming a member of parliament, where we get out and about and do everything from door knocking to debates and speeches and the like. But once you become a member of parliament, often the expectation or the understanding of what the job of a member of parliament is like is going to be somewhat different to what you may have thought it was on the campaign trail. And so, one of the things that we talk a lot about in my constituency office. So, as a constituent member of parliament, I represent an area of about 5,700 square kilometres of New Zealand. It's one of our larger electorates in New Zealand, not one of the largest, but certainly one of the larger electorates in New Zealand. And I have several electorate offices that I have staff in those offices that interact directly with the community on a regular basis. And one of the things I talk to them often about is that as a member of parliament in the electorate, you don't necessarily have power. You don't have the ability to ring up the Minister of Finance and say, can you solve this problem and spend money? You don't have the ability to ring up the Minister of Immigration and say, can you let this person into the country? You don't have the ability to ring up the hospital and say, can you give this person an operation? But you do have the ability to influence, and we call it a torch. In our office, we like to shine the torch, and we find that when we shine the torch on things here in New Zealand, particularly in my electorate, often things happen. And so one of the things that you have the ability to do as a member of parliament is understand how to use your influence for good and for change. The job, however, in Wellington, our capital city, where our parliament is quite different. The job in Wellington is much more about policy. What is it that we're trying to create? What is the New Zealand that we believe is going to be a better place if we're able to get there, if we're able to make the changes necessary to take New Zealand on that journey? And so I won't talk about the politics of my view of the world or my party's view of the world, the party that I am part of in Parliament. But what I will say is important as a member of Parliament is having a view for where you're trying to go. What is it that we're trying to achieve as a party? And I'm a big believer, as is our party in that process, of being clear of the values that you stand for. What are the values that you make your policy decisions based on? Because on any given day, are you going to be making decisions about policy? Everything from transport to hospitals to education, to whether or not you ban social media for under 16-year-olds, which is a issue currently in front of our parliament in New Zealand that I've been chairing an inquiry that our parliament has undertaken into the question of online social media and other online harm that young New Zealanders experience. So we have to make decisions based on something. And in our party, we believe as members of parliament, it's really important to make those decisions thinking about what your values are as a party and as a member of parliament. And I find that when you put policy through a filter of values, it's a lot easier to make decisions on whether or not you support that policy, you don't support that policy, or you think that policy should be changed. So how can you, as teenagers, influence people like me? Well, the first thing I'd say to you is create a long-term focus, a long-term view. What is it that you believe the world should look like? What is it that you believe your country should look like in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, in 50 years' time? What is the world, what is the country that you believe you should be passing on to the next generation that will follow after you? Remind politicians like myself that we are caretakers of our country for you. Have conviction of what it is that you believe in, but get involved in youth organizations that are actually helping to shape that change. Too often people will come along and say, I've got a great idea, but they haven't been able to prove that they've achieved anything in their own right. They haven't demonstrated what they've done as a young person or as a youth organization to try and create that change, even on a small scale in a local area, in a city, in a district, or in a state. And if you can demonstrate that you've been able to achieve some change, it'll make engaging people like me much more successful because we'll be able to look and understand that you have been able to do something with your idea. Lastly, when you promote policy, don't just promote an idea. It's really easy to come in and say, we should do X. We should build a bridge, or we should remove all coal power stations, or we should stop building roads, or we should give free healthcare to everyone. But following the idea, you've got to think about, well, actually, how are we going to implement this? Who's going to pay for it? And if your answer to that is more tax, or it's less tax, or it's user pays, or whatever the answer is that you have to that particular solution for the fiscal challenge of your policy, think through, well, who's going to agree with that? And who's not going to agree with that? And think about how you can influence those that might not support your view to change their view. Or maybe how you might need to change some of your view to make it more palatable to a wider group so that you can advance your agenda, advance what you believe is right for your city, your district, your state, your country in a more successful manner. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into my world as a member of parliament, given you a little bit of an insight into how I approach things and what we do here in New Zealand, and happy to take any questions after my colleague from Malawi has had the opportunity to share his opening address as well.
Thank you so much, MP Carl Bates, for that amazing start to the 40th Parliamentary Session. What New Zealand does in the form of youth parliaments by giving youth the power to really influence policy making on very similar lines, the WTP tries to give teenagers an understanding of how their own parliaments function, how democracies function. A lot of them know how United Nations function because they are a part of some or the other MUN, but they don't know how their own local parliaments function. They're very disconnected from their core reality, their constituency, their representatives. One of the MPs at one of these sessions at WTP asked the teenagers and even the school leaders on this call that, can you name your current member of parliament who's representing you in your parliament? And 80% of the audience did not know that. Now, which is not a very, a shape of affairs when you are somebody who wants democracy to function. Before I invite the next guest, all the chapter schools who have joined as, from a classroom, if there are multiple children looking onto a single screen for this, if you want to submit questions, you can submit them in the chat and we'll take those questions as well. So, you mentioned something very important that all of these teenagers have to understand. A teen thinks an idea can change the world. The world does not run on ideas. It runs on fully formulated solutions. So what Carl mentioned very well, that when you go to anyone with power, with influence, with resources, with money to get something done, it cannot be just an idea. It has to be the whole story, and that story has to shrink into an elevator pitch, or must be comprehensible to that individual within 50 to 59 seconds. That's why we ask you at the Teen Parliament, create your videos within 59 seconds. If you can't explain and excite somebody about your solution within that much of time, people might not have the time and attention for it. Thank you so much, Carl, for that amazing start to the session. Let's now invite the second speaker to the 40th Parliamentary Session for their opening address. A very warm welcome to Honorable MP Victor Musowa, who's the first Deputy Speaker of Malawi. So a very warm welcome to you, sir, and over to you for the opening address of the 48th Parliamentary Session.
Good morning from Malawi, all participants, all teen members of parliament. I would like to join the enthusiasm of young people in addressing the challenges the world is facing. And I would like to say, I am a member of parliament. I'm currently serving as the first deputy speaker. I joined parliament in 2014, and I've been a backbencher. I've been an initiator of policy. I've brought to parliament few pieces of legislations, private members' legislations, and I've chaired committees of parliament, and I understand what are the needs out there. So For example, my constituency, I come from the most rural constituency in Malawi. It's 520 kilometers from the capital city, Lilongwe, to the south after Blantyre. So Parliament meets in Lilongwe, but the people I represent stay in Mulanje, Bali. It's a beautiful village set up, no third roads. Majority of people, women and young people, are struggling to make ends meet. So they are the people I represent. So in a nutshell, I bring policy to Parliament. I get engagements with youth organizations in my constituency. So they would call me, for example, on issues of afforestation, issues of climate change. There's a grouping in my constituency that champions climate change and mitigations and issues to do with reforestation. So they have always challenged me on what I need to bring to Parliament. So in the process of meeting young people or young groups in my constituency, we have together challenged government. We have together challenged the executive through Parliament in bringing a policy change. But it's not a straightforward type idea. It comes from my constituency. I've had to do a lot of lobbying, share the knowledge with other networks around Malawi before it gets to Parliament. So by the time it gets to Parliament, there is advocacy going around, either social media or otherwise, where the issues the idea that we would like to champion is shared to many Malawians, to many people in the country. At the end of the day, it becomes a policy. When it becomes a policy supported, government we will initiate that policy. As my friend has said, the one member from Ireland, it's actually there's a question of priority. What comes first? A lot of people I represent, they would like their issues to be a priority in Parliament. At times, it's not like that. It's a win-win situation. You give in to a friend, an honorable member who is bringing in a different type of programming or policy direction so that in future they support what you're bringing in. So you don't win every day. If as a leader, as a young leader, you can't win in all what you're doing. At the end of the day, it is not about you winning. It is about changing the world. It is about you. If your policies are acceptable and are implementable. I'll give you an example. The most recent challenge that we've had in Malawi is a lot of young girls dropping out of school, especially high school. They could not afford to go to high school because the high schools are expensive to the level of the poverty of a lot of young girls in Malawi. So it had to take a member of parliament to champion that. So a grouping of us championed a policy direction. And then during the last campaign, because this is a new parliament, we only voted in September this year. So we championed, so through the National Youth Advocacy grouping, we challenged government to say all political parties participating in the elections should make a promise that looks at the school fees, tuition fees for girls or high schools in Malawi. So that is every political party signed to this. And now the current government signed and they are already being challenged in parliament to implement a free secondary school education. How that is going to be funded, they have increased taxes. They have introduced a levy on a few other products in Malawi so that that specific levy should cover universal education, targeting all high school going students, all those that cannot afford to be funded. So it's a challenging a resource that requires a lot of resources. But when you champion a policy and that policy becomes a reality, government and the citizenry have to find ways of financing it. So either locally financed or it has to be financed by donors. But what we have challenged Malawians, local Malawians, is let's push our taxes a little bit up. VAT, push it 1% up. Provide a levy for high school education. Provide a small percent, 0.005% for girls' education, general girls' education. So we have shown commitment as a country. We will suffer to pay more, but we will have to fund our education, high school education. We believing that you train one student, you train one student would feed the whole village when they are successful. But if you train one girl child, you would feed a couple of villages. So it's a local philosophy because our systems in education are not conducive as we speak. But with this change, it will enable a lot of young girls, young boys to go to school, to go to high school, and possibly end up into colleges and be educated because you need an educated community to advocate for policies that they need. So those are the issues that we've been championing. And I'm so happy that now I'm the first deputy speaker of parliament because I had to sit in that day for me to throw the hammer on the policy formulation. So instead of me participating in the debate, I was actually the one processing the bill to come to parliament, and and you could see how quick I throw the hammer down before possibly recognizing so many other members because I was a little bit biased because it's a policy that I've always championed and I've always wanted to be advocated in Malawi. So young people can influence change. How? There's several ways, as it has already been said. One of it is get your time to know who is representing your constituency, who is representing Malawi, who are the people in parliament that are championing specific issues that you need to involve, you need to engage. Actually, if I get questions, I will respond to open up a discussion. But I feel we need to start from where young people are. We can't move without participation of young people. My next assignment is the formulation of the youth caucus in parliament. Because of the big youth campaigns that we've had, we have now generated young parliamentarians to parliament. For the first time, I would say more than 30 members of parliament that are young people in parliament. And I'm challenging them that we need to have a huge caucus that will champion youth participation and let them all participate for the formulation of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Victor, the Deputy Speaker. I think you brought in a completely new perspective to the conversation. All the teens, you understand what's a member of parliament, how they represent you in a parliament. Now there's somebody who makes that parliament function. They're the speakers or the deputy speakers. They have a very different role to play. They have to bring things to conclusion. If any of you have participated in the voting debates that we do at the World Teen Parliament, you would have experienced the kind of commotion that comes in when you do a discussion. And finally, bringing it to a conclusion is a skill in itself. So how do you develop that? You get elected through a party system. You have your own ideology, but that ideology has to be left behind. You have to become a completely new individual to make a parliament function, giving everyone the time, space, attention so that they can put forth their perspective. The reason the World Teen Parliament is there so that you all understand these nuances and build them in yourselves. Because these are some of the skills and traits. If you have them in you as humans, you'll be successful in whichever career stream you go. Let's take some more experience from these amazing people. So I have one question for our MP Carl Bates before we take the questions of these teenagers. You have been a very successful businessman. You have had an amazing business career before you got into politics and you became a member of parliament. A lot of teenagers now across the globe, across countries, they're very excited about startups, about entrepreneurship. And they think, what can we do or learn to get into business and become superbly successful? What are the skills that are exactly the same, whether in entrepreneurship, whether in being a member of parliament, and what are the skills that these teenagers should start picking up early so that they become successful in whichever stream they go into?
It's a great question, and it focuses on a couple of things about the role of business people as well as parliamentarians. At the end of the day, in both sets, often you've got to come up with an idea and you've got to demonstrate that it has support, and then you've ultimately got to support its implementation. Now, as a member of parliament, you may just focus on the first two of those, but if you have the opportunity in your journey to become a minister or a member of the executive, you may play a role in the implementation of that policy, and those skills will become valuable in that process. If you've been involved in managing people or managing budgets or implementing processes or policies or considering how to make things better or more effective, all of those skills are transferable to the role that you would play as part of an executive within any parliament anywhere in the world. As a member of parliament, one of the things you've got to do is you've got to be able to sell your ideas. You've got to sell your ideas to constituents. You've got to sell your ideas to fellow members, as Victor was just sharing, in terms of the implementation of the education policy for secondary school in Malawi. He had to sell that to his colleagues. It's exactly the same as something you've got to do in business. You've got to sell your idea, whether it be to your colleagues in your own business or it be to your customers and to your clients. So I think that there are a lot of skills that are transferable from the real world into Parliament. And while I have colleagues here in the New Zealand Parliament that are very successful and have only really been on a political journey since leaving university, personally, I do have a bit of a bias for having people in Parliament who have those real world experiences that can be used and leveraged within the parliamentary setting, because they each bring unique perspectives into Parliament that are really valuable.
Thank you so much, Carl. And yes, it's a very similar world anywhere in whichever career stream you get. If you want to go to the top, the peak is very small. The number of people are always less. So you have to understand the core skill is understanding people. How well you
Correct.
understand the people around you, the community around you. If you understand that well and you can accordingly respond, that's where the real magic happens. So with this itself, I would like to ask a question to Honorable Victor Musowa. Since you are the deputy speaker now, when MPs they give their debates, when they put their points up, they get excited, sometimes they get angry, sometimes they get aggressive. There's a lot of emotion that comes in, and you have to stop them from speaking. And you have to move to the next speaker because everyone has limited time. You have to give people the time to speak. So, what are your nuances or what are the skills that you have developed to make people go quiet and still not feel offended and not, feel like, the speaker is not on our side? What are the techniques that you use to control your parliament or rather, make it function nicely?
Thank you. I think that's a very good question. Because coming from being a member of parliament myself, I was actually one member of parliament that was so participatory, and I would say I was one of the most vocal members of parliament. I challenged the former speakers several times. I questioned the judgment, although our own rules do not allow us to question the judgment by the speaker. Actually, the speaker's judgment is final. But with time, I've learned that listening helps you to understand people. People come to parliament representing political parties and coming from different backgrounds. So they would sit in a political caucus and agree on what they're bringing to to parliament. But then when they're a big number, they would start one by one debating on the same subject. At the end of the day, even if it is coming from opposition, and the leader of that house, that particular day, who is the government leader, does not allow that to come, the speaker has to make a discretion, has to make an informed decision to allow the house proceed on a subject that was not on the order paper. For just one or two people, when they speak and you give direction to say, for example, honor member, what you're bringing is very important. But you know our rules. Can you follow our rules? Please follow rule, and you're guiding them which rule to follow. Because then by then you have your table clerks seated in front of you. They are advising you all the time. They know which orders to follow. And then when you give that advice, it gives solace to the honorable members. But it's not all the time you'd be the best speaker. You wouldn't be a good speaker. There's actually no good speaker, because there are times you have to bring order to the House. There are times you have to use rules that will end up suspending someone. Okay? If someone is so unruly, they don't listen, you'd have to end up sending them to a day, 2 days suspension. That brings a little bit chaos at times. But when you make a decision as a speaker, you stand with it. At times you feel you could reverse your decision, but it shows weakness in leadership. So when you make your decision, you stand with it. But if you would like it to be looked into, you can refer to the next speaker, or you can refer to the business committee to look at your judgment. But I've learned to say, if you follow the debate carefully, you'd actually know the conclusion before the honorable member goes to the conclusion, because you actually know what they're bringing to the table. But there are always those members that will ambush the speaker. They'll rise on a point of order, and then you grant them a point of order. In our Malawi parliament, it's only 1 minute, and they'll start to speak in a way you feel like it is a point of order. For example, they say, Mr. Speaker, is it in order for so to do this? But now they're bringing in a subject that is very sensitive. They're bringing in a subject that is completely out of order. And then you cannot just rule them because they're so energetic, they're so ready to fight you. You allow them another 1 minute, then you remind them, Honour Member, you switch off the microphone. Honour Member, which rules are you using? Instead of telling them, Honour Member, what you're saying is wrong. So you become a little diplomatic in telling them, Honour Member, for example, Honour Member for Blantyre or Lilongwe Central, what rule of the House are you using to pose your argument? And then they'll start to look for in the book. They will not get it. They'll say, I've forgotten the rule, Honorable Speaker. But so the process of chatting, exchanging, listening has made people to understand you, honor members to understand you. But it is a job that you should be prepared. The House can burst anytime. The House the fire in the House can lead up anytime. Last week I was sitting there, an honorable member comes, he sits in the front row as leadership. I give him the floor. He tells me the police are trying to arrest someone in the opposition, and he wants us to start discussing it right then. I said, Honorable Member, you have Rule 14. Can you please use Rule 14 to ask your question? Then the Speaker will grant you time towards the very end of our discussion. And then he said, okay, all right. Then he wrote the question. Then I invited him to my office on the half break to plead with him not to bring his subject. And because we talked over it, he came and ended up not withdrawing it, but then I asked him, Remember, you have the floor. So when he had the floor, he said, okay, I had a considerable chat with the right honorable speaker. I feel I need appropriate time and research for my question to be retaken on another time. When they do that, you say, that's very good. So you don't need to look political or one-sided, but you need also to be a leader. So it's a process. Be there to listen, to empathize, because some subjects are sensitive subjects. Like a doctor was killed in the seat of Blantyre by robbers, and the member from Blantyre wanted to bring it first business in the House. You could not say no to him because it's a sensitive subject. A female young doctor was killed and at gunpoint. You need to empathize and break the rule a little bit, allow the honorable member to raise the issue. Because if you say no, the whole newspapers next morning say the speaker did not allow this to be discussed in the House. The speaker did not feel sorry for the young doctor that was killed. So you need also to empathize and follow the rules of the House. So I feel I'm at the right time where I am able to implement all the processes of learning to what I'm doing right now. It's been a process, and I feel I'm doing it right.
Thank you so much for that response. So teenagers, you just learned how to maneuver rules when you yourself are the rule maker. So just on a lighter note, he just taught you how to typically weaponize a rule and how to use it, how not to use it. To just dumb it down, he gave such amazing examples. Just for all the teenagers who are there on the call, when you are in an argument between friends, how do you bring peace to that conversation? That, at an amazingly large scale, is what the Deputy Speaker does in the Parliament. So you have to understand it's all about understanding and managing people, managing emotions, managing conversations. If you are able to do that, that's the most critical skill. Why do I put everything towards skill when after these questions? Is for a simple reason. As a teen, you have to build connections. The World Teen Parliament is not only about democracy, it's about your career selection as well. You're being able to find out your place in the world. See the way these people respond to questions that we put to them. How do they put in examples? How do they put in their stories? And how would they make the whole conversation exciting? So thank you so much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Let me ask the next question to Mr. Karl. I think we have already received some questions from teenagers. Okay, so the next question comes from Arfa Zoya. Arfa, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Hi everyone, I'm Alfa Zoya, an MP at the 4th World Teen Parliament, and my question is for Mr. Carl Bates. My question is, in an era of fast options and social media influence, what ethical standards do you think and expect from teen MPs to uphold the future laws? Thank you.
So it's a really good question, and thank you for asking that, and thank you for your interest in this process. I think that it just shows such maturity that as a group of youth MPs, essentially, you're going on this journey to think about how to build your skills for the future. Social media has certainly changed the landscape for being a member of parliament. Back when the New Zealand Parliament started in the 19th century, MPs would travel for up to a month to get to parliament. They would spend 3 months at parliament. They would travel, for example, if they were from the bottom of the South Island, a month to get home, and that would be their parliamentary year. Now we travel and we're at parliament in 2 hours. We're there for 3 days, and then we're back in our electorates and we're back the following week. And in among all of that time, we can have things happen that flow through on social media that mean we've got to respond and make decisions. We can do things wrong as members of parliament and overnight be all over social media. So it's really important to be very conscious of what you are doing, what you are saying, what is being recorded, and make sure that at all times you are acting in the best possible way. Our leader often talks to us about the fact that we're always on. Whether it's on a Sunday afternoon with my children going down to a local cafe, or it's on the plane this afternoon when I was flying back from Christchurch, or when I'm driving in my car, I'm a member of parliament, and there might be someone that sees me and sees what I'm doing. And so it's really important to always think about the fact that you are a member of parliament. You're never not a member of parliament, if that makes sense. And the second thing I would say is to reflect back on my earlier comments about what are your values. When you're asked to make a decision, when you're asked to think about how you're going to vote on something, what is the value set that you reflect on when you make that decision? So I have 2 value sets I think about when I'm approaching policy making. One is the party's values. So when we make decisions as a party, I'm thinking about what are the party's values. I've subscribed to a particular party. I'm a member of the New Zealand National Party. So we have a set of values. And so when we're making policy, does the policy that we're proposing reflect those policies? Then the second opportunity I have to vote on a particular policy is is a conscience vote, which is when you get to vote regardless of your party affiliation. You get to vote purely on what you believe is right or wrong in relation to that type of law. So in New Zealand, we call that a conscience vote. So when I'm making a conscience vote, I reflect on my values, and I want to be able to stand up and say, I voted this way because it reflects the values that I believe we should be reflecting in our society. So hopefully that just gives you a little bit of a sense of, the importance of always acting with integrity, acting with your morals, reflecting those in the way you act as a member of parliament. And then secondly, how you can go about reflecting on your values and your perspectives and your morals and your integrity when you're making decisions about policy.
Thank you so much, Carl, for that amazing answer. I would just give it a little more context for all the teenagers. All the teens, this is the time or age, in your life when it's time for your crushes. Somebody has a crush on someone has a crush on someone, right? If you have that, or if you know the concept, give me a thumbs up. Super. So all of you know that. So being a member of parliament is like your crush moving with you all the time. So you have to keep your image right, your clothing right, your expression right, your language right, and you don't get to be on leave from that. That's something that you have to maintain. That kind of decorum you have to always be in, because at any point of time, you could get a question coming your way. You could be getting an opinion coming your way. You could be building a good or a bad perception about you. That's the difficulty of being a public representative. I hope you all get the emotion that Carl just explained to you. So thank you so much for that answer. Let's move on to the next question. The next question comes from Kunal Sharma. Kunal, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Hello, myself Kunal Sharma, and my question is for Victor Musowa, that how can government guarantee quality education for rural and low-income teenagers that facing teacher shortages and rising costs?
Thank you for that question. So it's actually a very good question. At policy level, there is a lot that a member of parliament does to promote education in general. But you're looking at a situation where the world is so diverse, and we represent different type of young people, and the access to education for young people is not universal as we speak today. There are countries in the world where young people, teenagers, are struggling to get into formal education. So at policy level, a member of parliament should be ready to be challenged. And in the process of being challenged, that's when you realize the problems of the people you represent first, or the people in your country. So you have to be able to listen. You have to be able to know what is the problem out there. In the process of knowing, you have to be able to bring solutions. Actually, solutions will never be a unidirection solutions. It won't just come from you as a member of parliament. Solutions are always participatory. You need to participate. You need to, the people that are being affected by the problem, understand and be able to give their part of a story. For example, in Malawi, I'll give you an example. Young people that are failing to go to school today in Malawi, we did an assessment and discovered that the tuition fees, the school fees, was a block to them to go to school. So we decided to say, let's bring in a policy that will remove a requirement for them to pay school fees, so that they should participate. But before we started that, we had to involve them into a research. So you bring in evidence on what are the problems that they're facing, that young people in Malawi are facing. And the school fees was not just one, it was actually a list of 11 problems. Some was just mere poverty. Some didn't like to go to school. Some came from abusive backgrounds. They had parents that never were available for their kids. So some were orphaned because of all other problems that their parents have passed, and they've left them young. Some have been on the streets because of so many other problems. But we said, let's remove one barrier to education, which is tuition and school fees. at primary school and high school. So as we remove that, our target is for the students, young people, to access school freely. It doesn't mean all young people will go to school until we say, can we make education compulsory as a parliament? Can we do that? If we make it compulsory, will the students go there willingly to learn, or they'll go there because they are being forced to go to school? But then we are saying, can we introduce vocational skills for students that are struggling in classes? So this all is a member of parliament looking critically at the needs of your constituents and participating, allowing the young people to participate. That's why I like the participation of members of parliament and the teen parliamentarians in this forum, because it helps the policymaker to understand the young people. The young people have ideas. I can tell you, if we put a young person out there, and majority of parliamentarians in the world, so many young people are so smart that they could change this world, but possibly they would change it so quick, other countries would crash, because they would want, a lot of young people would want problems to be solved tomorrow. But in real life, it doesn't work like that. As in a business, in education, you don't get to finish your school within a year. You have to go there several years. You can't succeed in a business plan in a matter of months. You'd have to do it, change along the way, short-term goals, long-term goals. So at the end of the day, you have a target. So every young person, every policymaker needs to set up a standard of what they want to achieve. We need to set up what's our destination. And in the process, we'll be able to achieve what we want, especially making young people participate in the education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Victor, for that answer. So now it's time to go to more questions that these teenagers have submitted. But just to add some more context on what Honorable MP Victor told, that a teenager has a lot of ideas. You have that, unbiased energy. You don't bring in a baggage of prejudice. You don't bring in a baggage of ideology. You're somebody who can think out loud. So this is your skill. Don't feel bad about it. A lot of teenagers are surrounded by people who say, can't you just keep quiet? Can't you not be revolting against everything? People, they don't like the energy that you bring to the conversation. So don't feel bad about it. That's a skill that you have. Use it in the right direction. Think of how you can put it to use. Thank you so much, sir. The next question comes from Sanchit Kumar Sharma. I think Sanchit has a question for both the guests. So Sanchit, go one by one. Over to you for your question for MP Karl. Please unmute, introduce yourself, and then ask the question.
Greetings, everyone. I am Sanchit Kumar Sharma, a grade 12 student from Dharav High School, Vidyadhar, Jaipur, Rajasthan, India. And Mr. Karl Bates, my question for you is, what is the biggest misunderstanding about Parliament that you had before you became an MP, and how does that affect the advice you give to young voters?
It's a really interesting question, and there are a lot of things that I learnt going into Parliament. I think one of the things that I learnt very quickly, and was told this in advance, so I knew that this was going to be the case, but I didn't really appreciate it until I entered Parliament. And that is that Parliament has a whole set of rules and approach and hierarchy that you don't really appreciate until you enter Parliament. And you've got to learn the ropes. It's often described as, when you're a new MP, like being your first day at secondary school, and you've got to create those relationships. You've got to learn how the place works. And then as you progress through your years, you I suppose move from being a junior student to a senior member of the school. And your ability to master that and accept that and be humble in that journey is really, I think, important to your success in Parliament. Now, I'm not suggesting that by any stretch I have been successful. I'm in my first term as a Member of Parliament, so I'm imagining how some of this will go in the future. I imagine that Victor would be able to share his perspective, having served a much longer time in Parliament than I have. But certainly, this is what my colleagues have shared with me about the way that you succeed over time in Parliament.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Victor Musowa, my question for you is the same. What is the biggest misunderstanding about Parliament that you had before you became an MP, and how does that affect the advice you give to young voters?
Thank you for that question. Parliament hasn't been the way I thought. The first time I was joining politics, I thought I would change my country within a year. I thought, why is everyone else failing to change this country? Why are they passing laws all the time, but the laws are not helping us to change our country? So when I joined Parliament, I was so enthusiastic. I was so ready. I had the energy to do it. But when I got to Parliament, reality started to sink in. And I remember a year into Parliament, as I was addressing a youth meeting in my constituents, they started to say, you promised us this. Where is it? When are we going to have our expectations met? So then I had to start explaining things. So when you go to Parliament, in the process of learning, you start to realize it's not all what you prioritize in your constituency a priority of the country. A country has its own priorities. For example, countries will prioritize trade and investment because they would like to generate enough resources to manage their countries. But when you're coming into Parliament, you think you can go there and improve education the first 2 years, but it's not like that. So the most challenge has been the transition. But when you start to understand the rules of the game, the rules of parliamentary representation, parliamentary policy development, and parliamentary oversight, it's when you start to know the realities and start to bring that back to the constituents. And that's when you start to engage a lot of young people to participate in the advocacy for Parliament. Because we need more voice out there. We need the social media to bring in the gap between the members of Parliament we have today in the world and the teenagers and the young parliamentarians as you are, to understand, because there is a gap between what you know and what we know, what you believe in and what we believe in. Actually, I would say technology and social media has helped us a lot to interact more. And while we are doing that, social media, for example, in my country, is pretty new, and there's a lot of abuse of the social media. The member of parliament would have their own page where they're communicating with their constituents and Malawians in general. Someone out there creates another fake page that looks exactly like what the member of parliament page is, and they start to communicate nothing. They start to communicate jokes. They start to discredit the members of parliament. And in that process, people start to measure your integrity based on the Facebook page, which is not yours. And that process it has ended up members of parliament losing their integrity because the gap between the social media, the influencers, and the policy makers in the use of the social media has been there. But slowly we are getting more and more members of parliament entrusting the social media to engage their constituents. Because I would say, although my constituency is low class, poorer, we have 40 to 50% young people accessing social media as I speak. And I know in the future, social media will turn into another parliament. I can participate in a lot of parliamentary meetings using social media. I can make policies. I can challenge development using social media. But how the social media and the young people come together has also caused some type of a conflict. Because I know I used to be on Facebook a lot. I stopped when someone created their own Facebook and started to post rubbish. Out, you excuse my language, but started to post things that never applied in the world. Then I came out of Facebook. I went to Twitter. Same thing followed me there. So I would say we have a lot of work to do to bridge the gap of communication between the young people and policymakers and the expectations and the reality on the ground. Thank you for such a good question.
Thank you so much, Honorable Victor. I think you very well explained this menace that even teenagers have experienced, that people make your fake profiles. And for a policymaker, it's a completely mammoth of a problem that, it's very difficult to handle. But for a teenager, and you have to understand the real world and the social media world are far apart. And there is some consonance that you'll have to figure out in between them to understand what's really going on in the world. I know we are nearly at the end of the session, but there are a lot of questions to put forth. I would request both the guests, can we take two more questions before we do the conclusion?
Two more questions.
Okay, great. So the next question comes from Elena Ejaz. Elena, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Greetings everyone, I am Alina Ejaz from grade 9 Radiant Higher Secondary School, Jammu and Kashmir, India, and influencer at the 4th World Teen Parliament. My question is to Mr. Carl Bates. So, as a sitting member of the Parliament, what is one responsibility that you believe MPs should take right now to genuinely influence the real policy rather than mere discussions?
So that's an interesting question in the context that I think that's what we do every day, is not just discuss things, but we make decisions that influence the future of our country. If we take this week just gone, we've had what we've called urgency in New Zealand. So urgency is when Parliament sits for longer hours. So normally in New Zealand, in a sitting week, we sit on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Thursday without going into the specific hours till about 10 o'clock at night. Under urgency, we sit Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday through to midnight every night in order to get policy passed and laws made that influence the future of our country. This last week, we've made a fundamental change to the way we plan things in New Zealand, the way we determine where you can build things, the way we look after our environment, the way we manage those two things, one in each hand. It's the biggest change that New Zealand has had in planning in 30 years. It's not mere discussion, but it's a decision and an outcome that changes the future of our country. So I would suggest that as a member of Parliament, we certainly in New Zealand aren't just talking about things, we're taking action on a regular basis.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kal. I think the question what Alina missed was that what should a teen MP do so that there's more decision making happening rather than they just discussing. But your answer was
sorry, right. Well, if I can take a moment to just add to that part as well. I think it comes back, Alina, to that comment that I made earlier around not just the idea, but give the practical examples of the implementation and thoughts around cost. One of the things that often happens as a member of Parliament, you have people come along and they say, I've got a big idea. We need to solve the world's poverty. Okay. Yes, we can all agree on that. But what's something we can do today? So as an example, here in my hometown of Whanganui that I'm the Member of Parliament for, we have the city mission, which is the food bank in our city. Now, we've got some challenges in our city when it comes to support for the food bank and its ability to provide for everyone who needs to use their service. So as the Member of Parliament, I understood this problem and I worked with the city mission and we were raising the funds to buy their building. So by buying their building, they can reduce their operating cost and put that money into buying food every year. That's an example of taking an idea and turning it into a really practical, specific example of something that will help move the needle one step further. So I would suggest that in the big discussions, and I remember as a young person having these grand ideas, and I hope today I still have grand ideas, But I think the key that, particularly when I was involved in politics and other organizations as a younger person, was saying, well, okay, let's do something to move it forward and picking that specific thing that you can take action on now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carl. I would request both the guests for today to please keep yourself unmuted. Now is the time for a quick rapid fire. I'll ask you questions. You don't have a lot of time. You have to respond in just one word or one sentence
Okay.
to conclude this session. So I'll ask a question and both of you can respond. Whoever gets, to respond, we have to be just quick as possible. So the first rapid fire question for you: what frustrates you most about young people today? We have to be fast. We can't be slow.
Wow.
Oh, that's a big question. Use of social media.
Okay. Honorable Victor, what's your response? What frustrates you the most about young people?
I think failure to understand the realities of life.
Super. So the next question: if you were 16 again right now in 2025, would you join politics or would you avoid it?
I would join it, but
I'll join politics.
Okay, so both of you will
but
join.
not straight away. I would do what I did and go out in the real world and get some real world experience before I joined, but I would still want to have joined.
Should teenagers have the right to vote before 18 or after 18 or 18?
No, 18 is fine. I think that it's a very complicated debate that you can get into. But the reality is there has to be a point where you choose. 18 is right. Without, there's a much longer answer than one word, but 18.
18 is right too.
Super. So what's that one skill that you think every teenager must have in the current world?
The ability to have a discussion and a debate without getting offended.
And the ability to listen to others.
Ability to listen. What scares political leaders more? Angry teenagers or silent teenagers?
Silent teenagers. For me. Because you don't know what they want. You don't know if they're participating in their silence. So I would rather them be angry with me. It helps me to use my brain more.
Al, yours the same answer?
Just for the sake of argument, I'll say angry teenagers, because when teenagers are angry, often they're not listening and you can't have a two-way dialogue.
And for all the teenagers who are here, who are listening to this call, you've listened to both the leaders, one who operates the parliament and one who's part of the parliament, who knows business. So if your complete experience was exciting, you loved the whole conversation and you want to be a part of the conversation, put both your hands up in the air and give me lots of thumbs up in the chat so that I know that you enjoyed this conversation. Superb. So I can see the excitement. We thank both the guests today. Before the session concludes, the final question for both our guests: what do you feel about the World Teen Parliament platform? Should there be something like this? Should there be nothing like this? And would you want it to be there in the world? Would you not want it to be there in the world? Over to Carl first and then to Honorable Victor. Carl, over to you. What do you say about the WTP platform?
Look, I've enjoyed the opportunity to have a conversation with you all this evening and loved your questions and the ability to respond. And hopefully you've learned something from it. You'll take it, and we'll see a few of you in business, in organizations, NGOs, and maybe in Parliament one day in the future as well.
Over to Honorable Victor. What's your opinion of the WTP platform and your leaving message for the 40th Parliamentary Session?
I think this is a great platform. I think this needs to continue, and I need more participation. We need in the next parliament, let's get a lot of young people participate worldwide, because it opens the window for our young people to start to participate in the process of making decisions for their countries, and they are able to access knowledge and information from experienced politicians, experienced parliamentarians. I feel this is the best platform. Let's build this platform to reach every corner of the world.
Thank you so much to both our speakers. Before the session comes to an end, one question popped up into my mind. So I would like to put forth it to both of you. And this is the last question. We'll conclude after this. For the constituents or for the people, who is a better representative, a first-time parliamentarian or a multiple-time experienced parliamentarian? Who's better for their constituents?
It depends on the individual. I think a first-time parliamentarian can be very good at supporting their constituents, and certainly someone who's been a great first-time MP is going to be an absolutely fantastic MP a couple of terms down. There are other members of parliament who may not have the same skill, whether they've been there for 3 years or 20 years.
Yeah. Actually, my answer is the same. It varies from person to person. Some people would just be there for the people who want to work. Some members of parliament, whether they have experience or not, they don't want to connect. So to me, the first-time MP has the energy, and I love the energy I had when I was joining politics for the first time. But now the experienced one, when you have passion to work, helps you too to know where to go, to know what to do, at what level to participate in the debate. So it actually works in both directions. It's like you just have to be there. So if you're there, you're there. It doesn't matter whether you're experienced or a first-time MP. But there are those that withdraw from their roles. They're the ones that would end up saying, maybe the first-time MP is the best.
So thank you so much, both our guests for today, for being a part of the 40th Parliamentary Session. For all the teenagers who joined in, think on this last question. This is your food for thought. Would you want a first-time MP to represent you in your parliament, or would you want an experienced one? The reason this is food for thought is see on yourself. What did you do when you were a part of the World Teen Parliament? How did you perform? How did you use that opportunity? Because when you're in public office, things change a lot. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of the 40th Parliamentary Session of the World Teen Parliament. It was lovely interacting with all of you. Thank you to both our guests today for taking out their time and being here with us. Thank you so much. Namaste. Goodbye.